The Long Road by Wolfland. Sitting up, he held it out proudly. Here, you'll have to let me know if it was worth all that effort. Matang ignored his sarcastic grin as it reached out with one claw to pluck the berry from Stephen's hand. Holding the berry up in front of its nose, it rumbled a curious note, eyes focusing on the way the flesh dimpled ever so slightly under its grasp. Stephen watched his Pokémon in wonder, and he nearly laughed again at the absurdity of the dainty behavior of his now monstrous partner. Metagross's gaze flicked back to its trainer hesitantly, and Stephen caught its meaning. "It's all yours," he said with a smile. That was all it needed to hear, and with a happy cry, Metagross opened its jaws wide and popped the berry in. The look of satisfaction that washed over his Pokémon's face was equally comical, and Stephen couldn't hold in his laughter this time. "That good, huh?" Metagross grumbled in faux annoyance at its trainer's obvious amusement, but it didn't stop the behemoth from sidling up to Stephen and nudging gratefully into his chest in thanks. Stephen happily rubbed his Pokémon's brow in return. He was overjoyed to see that not only had they finally found a berry his starter loved, but it was able to achieve its final evolution to boot. But their job here wasn't done. Stephen's gaze slid back up to the top of the tree. "We still need to collect that second berry to plant, like the Berry Master said." Metagross rumbled in acknowledgement before leaning down, a signal for Stephen to climb aboard. It took a bit more effort to clamber atop his Pokémon now that it was larger, but he quickly settled himself in a kneel in the center of Metagross's head. "Ready." Grating an affirmative, Metagross rose off the ground several feet, where it wobbled unsteadily. Metagross?" Stephen never got to finish his question, as all of a sudden, Metagross dipped down and then shot skyward like a rocket, flattening its trainer to its back. It jolted to a stop with a proud rumble, and Stephen was finally able to peel his cheek from his Pokémon's steel hide and raise his head. Hovering right at eye level was the last Enigma berry. Dragging himself upright, Stephen reached out and plucked the berry with ease. With this second berry tucked safely in his hands, he gave the all-clear. "Okay, got it." Whoa! Metagross's descent was just as jarring as the first, but the landing was a lot smoother, using its legs like dampers for the impact. Stephen was able to stay atop his partner this time, but was no less rattled when he slid off Metagross's head to solid ground. "I think we're going to have to work on getting used to this new form." He tucked the Enigma berry in the crook of his arm before placing a hand against the thick steel of his partner's leg. "I bet you've got more power than you know what to do with. We just have to harness it, that's all. And I think I know the perfect place to do it. But first..." Stephen walked around his Pokémon and knelt down at the base of the Enigma tree. Metagross followed and drove one massive claw into the soft earth. Using its leg like an excavator, it lifted its claw, revealing the perfect size hole beneath. Gently, Stephen laid the Enigma berry in the soil, and Metagross dropped its claw full of dirt back on top. Patting it down, Stephen rose and observed their handiwork. "Agron would probably tell us just how bad a job that was, but between you and me, I think we did well." Metagross nodded, jaw cracking in a wide smile. "Let's head back and find the others. It's time we took another stab at the first cave that ever bested us. And I have another idea for redemption in mind along the way, too." They only took a slight detour on the way to Lily Cove. Mount Pier certainly looked a lot less intimidating in the daylight, and it showed in the way Stephen and his team were able to cut through the native ghost Pokémon population with ease. Some of it might have been due to the generous stock of Cosib berries the Master had given them as a parting gift, but Metagross was quick to insist it was able to handle everything, thanks to the way its final evolutionary form was practically brimming with power. Either way, after a quick stop at the Lily Cove department store for some supplies, it was only a short flight later that Steven stood outside the yawning entrance to Granite Cave, nearly bursting with confidence. Not wholly different from the way he'd felt the first time he'd laid eyes on this particular landform, but definitely certain the end result would be vastly improved. Sharing one final look with his partner, Steven nodded and stepped through with Metagross at his side, and the knowledge that he wouldn't make the same mistake twice. When Steven emerged from the depths of Granite Cave, he was in nearly the same condition as when he'd first arrived. Not a speck of dirt or dust marred his clothes, and his pack was filled to the point of bursting with a myriad of rock samples. Metagross, too, looked no worse for wear, despite how far they'd gone into the depths of the cave. Steven nearly laughed at the complete reversal of the first time he'd ventured into Granite Cave, but instead, he opted for marking the extent of his expedition in his Pokénav for the next time. The moment was interrupted, however, as his phone buzzed with a plethora of newly received notifications, now that it finally had service. Surely he couldn't have accumulated that many messages in a week. With a grimace, he withdrew the offending device from his pocket and scowled at the screen. Right at the top was a message from his father. "Another perk of caving thwarted by coming back to the surface," he mumbled as he opened the text. Metagross shifted at his side as he skimmed the message and finished with a sigh. "He wants me to come back to Rustboro for a Devon meeting." His partner's rumbled reply was muffled as Steven felt the walls of his future close in around him. Perhaps they had extended their journey as long as they could. At least the trip back to Rustboro would be convenient. He turned to his Pokémon, resting a hand across its cool, steel brow. "Are we ready?" A confident red gaze slid up to find his own, and his hand curled against his partner's armored side. A prickle of psychic energy coursed through him, and he steeled himself with his own determination. Time to take the final step. He dialed the familiar number with ease, and brought the phone to his ear. "Hey, Dad." "Yeah, I'll be there. See you soon." But even with such closely documented evolutionary study, some Pokémon have been known to evolve in other unique situations. Perhaps the strong bond between trainer and Pokémon is all that is necessary.